Hi, my name's Matthew Spacie. I'm the founder of Magic Bus, the co-founder of Clear Trip, and I live in Mumbai, India. So the journey really seems set with Magic Bus, but one of the deep challenges you have when you start non-profit organisations in a country like India is that you can't sit on the board and take a salary. So it becomes very difficult to sustain yourself economically. Having had my experience at Cox & Kings and running that organisation for some time, I spoke to my best friend in a pub one night, and we decided that we would start Clear Trip. We felt there was a really interesting gap in the market. We felt that travel was very complex, very, very difficult to access, and we would create a website which was simple 3 clicks to solve this travel challenge. And so that was the very informal birth of Clear Trip. So I actually ended up working at Clear Trip for 3 days a week and Magic Bus for 3 days a week, and both evolved, to large organisations. But I think one of the learnings I have from those days at Clear Trip as well is, and Magic Bus, and Cox & Kings, is that even today we run Magic Bus very much like a corporation. It's very accountable. There's great efficacy. Obviously with a human touch, of course, because that's what we do. But we've grown and we've scaled, not just in India, but to 7 other countries, because we have this view on how we run the organisation. So I came to India actually 22 years ago to be the CEO of a company called Cox & Kings, a large travel company here in India. And I worked with them for 3 or 4 years here in India before starting Magic Bus, a large non-profit now in India. And one of the reasons I started Magic Bus was, when you're a foreigner coming into a city like Mumbai, this visual dichotomy of seeing half of the city living in poverty and half of the city living not in poverty, in middle class and relative wealth, that sat very uneasily with me. So, whilst I was working with Cox & Kings, I decided that what I would do is I'd try and understand how we as a company could not just financially contribute, but also how could we use our resources, our staff, our partnerships to help build the capacity of non-profits that worked in that space. I was particularly interested in children and youth. I found it very difficult to find the right partner, so I decided to take 30 young men that lived on the street outside my office, and I took them into my rugby club, the Bombay Gymkhana, and I decided that I would become their coach, in many ways their mentor, but teach them rugby. One of the epiphanies I found when you work with young people and sport was that it is, as the cliche says, a great level playing field, and these are the poorest kids probably in the whole of the country. They represent the poorest kids in the whole country, but because we were playing sport, they were allowed to walk into the most exclusive club possibly in India, change in the changing rooms and play against, potentially and possibly some of the richest young people in India. And for me that became a really interesting dynamic, how you could use sport to really to level out a lot of the social, economic issues that we're presented with. It's called the Magic Bus because these same rugby boys at the weekends, what I did was, I used to rent a bus, and I used to drive the bus into one of the slums in Bombay, and we used to take 50 children from the slums of Bombay, from Dharavi, from Port Trust, Yogeshwari, and take 50 kids on, and the rugby boys would be the mentors of the younger kids from the slum. So I was actually asking, their payment to me was, you need to be the role models, the buyers, the heroes for 50 children who would come away to Lonavala, to the hill stations, the beaches, around the city. And this is phenomenally powerful because when you take young people, these leaders who come from the same environment, they understand and have the empathy to deal with the issues of children from those environments. So, it's a really interesting mechanism for me. And today the model is, 20 years later, we have 11,000 young people who every single day go out and deliver to nearly 500,000 children the Magic Bus program, but they are all young people from the slum village where those children live. We don't allow any external people to go in and deliver our programming. We feel it has to be from these are young people that have to solve, it's their community, their problem, no one's going to solve it for them. So we really make that a big part of the DNA of what we do at Magic Bus today. But with these bus rides, it became known as the Magic Bus, so that's why it's called the Magic Bus, because the Magic Bus literally went into the slums of Bombay, picked up children and took them away for this incredible weekend. So I think, a lot of people talk to me and say, Matthew, 500,000 kids, look what you're doing, isn't it amazing? You must be so proud. And I don't think pride ever enters into my daily thought. I don't think it has ever entered into my daily thought, because, I think my landscape is there are 700 million people in our country, in India, that live on less than $2 a day. To give you some sense of context, if you took the whole of Africa, the continent of Africa, and took the number of people living on $2 a day, it wouldn't even fill 2 states in India. So the scope of the challenge is so vast that, I don't think there's any time really to reflect. And I think just having this sense that there's still this mountain to climb, until we're reaching those tens, hundreds of millions, the job isn't done, because those children, those young people need that assistance, that help. It's just by virtue of this ovarian lottery, they happen to be born there. I think having that insurgent attitude and that energy, it's very compelling. It's a very compelling subject matter, isn't it? If we evolve, if we move forward in some years, obviously, we created a really good program. We understood how we could use games and play to speak to the children through metaphor. So designing a game that can get a young child to understand why it's important to go to school. And equally important, getting a parent. So much of our curricula in the slums and villages around India is working with the parents, the mothers particularly, to get their daughters to go to school at the age of 13 and not get married, and then work towards getting a sustainable income. And today we call this childhood through to livelihood. Every child on our program joins at the age of 12 years old, and we hold their hands all the way through to 18 when we deliver them into a livelihood. And that for me is our stake in the ground. None of this work can be done quickly. It's not simple work. And so we take that time, that 7-year period, to make sure that we give every child all the things they need. They need to go to school. They need to live a healthy life. They need to understand good agency, the ability to have good self-esteem, good decision-making, the ability, to be able to communicate, to work in a team, etc. All these things are critical skills that will determine whether that child moves out of poverty. But at the end of that journey, once we've made sure they stay in school, we've made sure they don't get married, our commitment to that child is to ensure that they go through one of the Magic Bus livelihood centres. So at the moment this year we'll place 15,000 young people in jobs. Next year that goes to 30,000 young people in jobs. The year after we peak at 60,000. So the idea is to get these children to join the programme, stay in the continuous programme all the way through, and leave really, leave as confident young people with these great opportunities, but making sure that they are out of poverty and they don't go back into that cycle. My biggest achievement at Magic Bus is that if I got run over by the Magic Bus tomorrow, I know our organisation will go on to bigger and greater things without me.
So now it's very different. I mean, as a young lad at 25, I used to play a lot of rugby. In fact, I used to play international rugby. And there were very intense programs then. Obviously, every day fitness was a big part of my day. And now, I'm kind of moving away from having an environment where when I go to the gym, I'm trying to kill it as much as I can because I've got a short amount of time to do the workout. So really doing less but more often. Making sure that I get there 3-4 times a week, 20 minutes, half an hour, and making sure that I keep my body fit. And I think that's sort of been for me quite a revelation in adapting with age, and how my body reacts.
It's a necessity, At the moment in India, we're really suffering from a real paucity of wellness that isn't really getting better very fast. We are facing quite a challenge in India. Only 6% of Indians have access to organised sport, and these linkages between sport and wellness and all the other social, economic indicators is already established. And so I think, you know, the effort that Gold's Gym is making to make India fit isn't just about the gym and that body, it's also about nation building, about helping create a better India. So I'd love to wish Gold's Gym a happy anniversary.